Good evening. So, 2 days ago, Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown Podcast went on the Tim Pool show, said this.
War fervor amongst the right when it comes to Russia, but then if you just mention, China or the CCP to them, Posobiec comes to mind. Then they are ready for World War against China, and
That's all it took. Just a 1 second clip to say that Jack Posobiec comes to mind in regards to the hypocrisy of the right admonishing the left when it comes to advocating for war with a foreign country. Now, there was nothing that Clint Russell basically said that was wrong, but boy, did that take the ire of Jack Posobiec. I'm going to get to Jack in a minute. Jack immediately did this and basically said this about Clint Russell. And Clint Russell's part of the libertarian movement. And basically, a lot of people came to his defense in Jack Posobiec's timeline. And Jack Posobiec basically said this to the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Not very kind. Needless to say, this is not a ad hom video, because what I want to share with you about who Jack Posobiec really is and why I think he's no better than, say, anybody from the left. In fact, for those on the conservative side of the fence, they claim to hate the woke mob of the left. But in actuality, they share more in common than they do against. So, who's Jack Posobiec anyway? Well, he's an alt-right political activist, television correspondent, and presenter. He's also a fringe conspiracy theorist. He makes a lot of erroneous theories, and he's a spreader of disinformation regarding anything that is from the left, basically slanders them. And they do the same thing to the right, too. So this is like vice versa. He is a pro-Trumper. He basically uses his viral media to basically promote anything to do with Donald Trump, and as well as using anti-Semitic white supremacist symbols and talking points. And I'm going to show you what I mean, because there's now deleted tweets that he once had. And I have two of them where basically, he just is quite hypocritical when it comes to him saying that he's not, but he is. But a little bit of background about Jack Posobiec. He was actually born in Norristown, Pennsylvania. His parents are both Democrats. That's pretty ironic in its own right. He worked for the United States Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, China, and played a minor role in the film The Forbidden Kingdom, which was released in 2008, which was written by John Fusco. The film actually is based on loosely on the 16th century novel Journey to the West. And it starred actually Jackie Chan and Jet Li. He worked for WPHT, which is a commercial radio station licensed in Pennsylvania, which talks about many various things. It's basically a conservative talk radio show that's promoted for the campaign of Steve Johnson in the 2010 Pennsylvania gubernatorial election. One thing that really is interesting to me is the following. Posobiec actually served several tours for the United States Naval Reserve between the years 2010 and 2017-18. And he was actually, he achieved the rank of lieutenant junior grade. And then he was deployed, of all places, to Guantanamo Bay, but the naval base in September of 2012. And he also worked at the Office of Naval Intelligence. And for those who are saying, well, why is that so suspicious? Well, the Office of Naval Intelligence basically functions as a collector of, also analyzes uh, maritime intelligence and disseminates that intelligence um, to key strategic, operational, and tactical and foreign policy decision makers in Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon. Um, and they have also the conspiracy theory, which has a lot of merit to it, to the JFK assassination. There's a lot of deep history regarding the Office of Naval Intelligence, regarding Pearl Harbor, the JFK assassination. Yeah, you name it. And also um, the bombing of the that warship, the American warship. I forgot the name of that ship actually. Um, Damn it, I can't think of it. But the Liberty, the USS Liberty, and so there's a lot of history regarding deep history regarding the Office of Naval Intelligence. Um, he was assigned to the Reserve Intelligence Unit at the Office of Naval Intelligence, Maritime Intelligence Center in Washington, and he resigned his civilian job with the Office of Naval Intelligence in March, I think, of 2018, because he claimed that it was a toxic work environment because he was a pro-Trumper and they were pro-democratic. Now, I'll tell you right now, one thing about the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, and no matter if even if a Democrat is in office, these institutions are heavily invested with um, conservatism. One thing about the White House, what they do is they recruit temps at the Liberty University. And need I remind you that Liberty University was created by Jerry Falwell. Um, and so it basically is a evangelical um, like influx of students that come and get hired as temps, and later on, some of them become high-ranking members of the of Congress and all throughout the United States. So there is no like this, there is no like woke ideology or communist ideology permeating anywhere in this country. Never has been. This country has been always a mixture of fascism and authoritarianism. And this is why I think this whole left right paradigm nonsense is what it is. It's nonsense. There is no left and right party. There's only a left and right party regarding domestic issues. That's to keep us divided. But when it comes to the more important global issues, there's one party. That's it. And my God, do you need any evidence when it comes to like Israel? Do you think there is any argument regarding how much funding they should get for the Iron Dome? No. Take a look at how much we gave them regarding the Iron Dome funding 2 years ago. Was there a yay or a nay? I think it was like 280 votes to like 2 dissents. And by the way, the progressives, like Alexandria Cortez, voted was an absentee ballot voter. Didn't even vote no. Progressives never exist in this country. Anyway, so he served at the Office of Naval Intelligence. And then during the 2016 election, Jack Posobiec served as a special project director for Citizens for Trump, which is of course, a pro-Trump organization, but not an official group. It was endorsed by Trump, but they didn't work directly under Trump. And basically, in 2017, late 2017, Posobiec resigned as a full-time position at the Office of Naval Intelligence, where his security clearance was actually suspended in August of 2017. I won't get into that much. Now, for his political background, Jack Posobiec describes himself as a Republican political operative. And that in 2017, he basically works as a realistic journalist. I don't know what that means. Part investigative, part activist, part commentary. And I'm going to tell you all that is hogwash, because wait until you hear about the conspiracies that he promoted. And you have to wonder, is like, wow, is anybody really that ignorant, or is he doing this on purpose? And that Jack Posobiec was quoted as saying, and this is coming from the New Yorker, that I'm willing to break the fourth wall. I'm willing to walk into an anti-Trump march and start chanting anti-Clinton stuff like that's hard to make something happen and then cover what happens. So in other words, he's trying to work as an antagonist. In other words, he's not winning people over with this, right? How do you defeat your enemy? Well, you defeat them by winning those ideas over to yours. That's how you change the enemy to an ally. No, Jack Posobiec, and much like those of the political far left, what they'll do is basically do the same thing what Jack Posobiec is doing. They'll play the antagonist and then react on the reaction. Remember what Saul Alinsky once said, that the action is in the reaction. And you'll notice this in politics, especially in politics of the last 25 years, and especially within the last 10 years, that you'll see that there is no working together. There is a working against each other so that they can react on each other's reactions. And they'll work on this. And by the way, does this hurt the left and right? Left and right? No, this hurts who? The public, because they're the ones reacting, right? Jack Posobiec is no different than, say, Keith Olbermann or Don Lemon, who basically say very incendiary things and then have the public, and go do it on viral media, and then have the public react to it. So in other words, what I think Jack Posobiec is doing is he is actually trying to gauge a reaction from his own followers and from those of the left. He doesn't want to unionize anybody. He wants to alienate. Well, this only hurts the people. It doesn't hurt the state. The state is already unionized, and it's unionized against you. Let's continue. Now, Posobiec is deeply rooted in conservative political ideology, especially with those of the alt-right, which is abhorred by the traditional conservatives. In fact, you'll notice that even when Trump was president, there was a large faction of conservatives, traditional conservatives, that wanted nothing to do with Donald Trump. And what Donald Trump basically did was, well, he's an acidic personality. Is he one of the worst presidents of our time? No, far from it. But what he did was he created a faction of the left that didn't exist before. And then what happens is, because of the acidic and most nefarious leftist pundits that brought out the worst of the alt-right, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Matt Gaetz, and Tom Cotton, and all those reprehensible people, is exactly what these acidic people on the right wanted. They needed that fuse to be lit. And the left all but ensured this to exist. It's almost like the United States. They go into Iraq in 2003, eliminate what? The first thing they did was Iraqi Provisional Order number 1 and Provisional Order number 2, thanks to L. Paul Bremer, who Bush appointed to regulate these orders. And what happened? Well, they liquidated the police and the military. What happens? Anarchy ensues. What did the American the American military do? They scratched their heads. How did this happen? Well, you made it happen. In other words, they didn't create the elements which arise from it, all these Salafist jihadists that came and took advantage and basically said, you see what the United States did? They created the vacuum, just like what the alt-right does, just like these fanatics on the left do. They create the vacuum for these militants of both political parties to basically react to one another. And it doesn't take much. So in 2017, Jack Posobiec actually organized a rally against political violence in Washington, D.C. to condemn the shooting of Steve Scalise and Richard Spencer, who's another, you know, ridiculous figure, almost comical. He's an alt-right figure who organized a separate competing rally and ridiculed Jack Posobiec and called it pathetic. Later in November, following a couple of months after that rally, Posobiec encouraged his Twitter followers, like I said before, to target a woman at her workplace after she came forward with allegations that Alabama Senator and known sexual deviant Roy Moore had attempted to have sex with when she was 14 years old. Instead of sending those followers to Roy Moore's house, they went and harassed this woman. The action is in the reaction. And Posobiec's social media, his Twitter profile, had deleted a lot of these tweets, are linked to white supremacist movements. And he's basically shied away from that now because he's been in trouble because of it. And I'll show you some of these tweets. He's published multiple posts containing the white supremacist code 1488, which is basically the 14 words. The 14 words basically is in reference to the numbers 88, which basically which is basically based on the eighth letter of the alphabet, H, Heil Hitler. The 14 words basically is in reference to, I always forget his name, David Lane, I want to say, David Lane, who is one of the 9 founding members of the defunct white separatist terrorist organization called The Order. And basically, there's a lot of history about that. You could Google it. Google 14 words. And the 88 stands for HH, Heil Hitler. And Jack Posobiec posted a tweet in October of 2016. I have the tweet that included a triple parentheses or an anti-Semitic symbol. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, so here he is at some conference that he had with Peter Thiel, right? So you can see right here, Jack Posobiec, this is 2016, October 2016, surrounded by them at Peter Thiel's press conference. Who is them? Jews. And by the way, Jack Posobiec is an AIPAC supporter. Go figure. Right? You can't criticize who you can't criticize, brother. Don't play that game, right? So this is not the first time he does this, right? So basically, Jack Posobiec gets in a little bit of trouble regarding that. Now, in 2017, August 2017, the following year, Posobiec makes a couple of comments regarding the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that led to very violent clashes between white nationalists and these anti-protesters. It was a real mess. And then you had that guy that comes in with his car and basically kills that poor woman and injures like a couple of dozen people. Posobiec said the rally had become a massive propaganda for the left, which basically he was right about that. The left used that and said, oh, you see, conservatives are all a bunch of fanatics and right-wingers. But no, they represent a very small number, although that number is now growing. Same thing for the fanatics of the left. That the media was fanning the flames of the violence. Well, that's what the media always does. And that he said Trump should have disavowed the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, why would you alienate a voting bloc that you need to win for re-election? Posobiec later tweets that he had consistently disavowed white nationalism and violence. Now, need I remind you that he has deep-rooted ties to white nationalists, like Grayson Allen, for example. And basically, you just saw that previous tweet he made in 2016. I mean, come on. So he then tweets, I think in November 2017, could be wrong about the month, it was in fall, that he was done trolling, right? So he's done trolling. It was time to do the right thing. And basically, Posobiec frequently tweeted about the white supremacist, um, white genocide conspiracy theory, right? That the whites are being liquidated, and the Jews are responsible for putting all these minorities in European nations. Is there some truth to it? I don't know what to tell you. I don't study this area. So, is there an influx of minorities and foreigners in European nations? Sure. But guess what? Those European nations are actually bombing who? The Middle East, based upon what? Conservative and neocon um, foreign policy guidelines. And who's involved with that? Israel, the Gulf, and the United States and the coalition partners. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at what we did to the Middle East between the years 2000, 1990 to 2000. How about current day? Almost 30. What is that? 1990, 2000, 33 years of completely carpet bombing and destroying Middle Eastern countries. Countries like the Congo, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq twice, you name it. We destroyed these countries. And where do you think these people are going to stay? Millions of people, they all left. And basically all these European countries basically said, and a lot of these are countries that basically became progressive in their domestic rules of law, and allow these people to come in the country, which basically is a clash of civilizations. This isn't about replacement theory that Jack Posobiec basically, that's simple-minded thinking. There is a complex set of values going on here. And it's not just one area. There's a multitude of areas. Now, we know through history regarding why minorities come to other countries. And basically, it's because the United States is somewhere involved in destroying someone's democracy, right? So there you have it. So, and then of course the Southern Poverty Law Center actually says that Jack Posobiec is an extremist, and everyone who criticizes, Israel or somebody else is an extremist. But Jack Posobiec plays an extremist. Do I think he's an extremist? I think he's full of it. But I'm going to get into that later, where I speculate about why I think this. So let's look into Jack Posobiec's conspiracy theories, his falsehoods, and all the other unsubstantiated claims that he made over the years. And he's promoted a slew of them. I compare him to, say, Alex Jones or Jim Fetzer, right? Just somebody who just gets it wrong more often than they get it right. So he actually, by the way, just for shits and giggles, according to the Independent in 2020, they wrote that Jack Posobiec was actually ablazed in a headline by the Philadelphia, which was basically which is a regional monthly magazine published of course, in Philadelphia, calling Jack Posobiec the king of fake news in 2017. And wait to hear what he had what he said in 2017, 2018, 2019. He was one of the most prominent promoters of the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. For those who don't know, the Pizzagate conspiracy theory basically was a conspiracy theory that went viral in 2016 during the United States presidential election, basically, which was to discredit a wide variety of organizations, including, of all people, the Washington, D.C. police, where basically members of the alt-right, not the conservatives, but the alt-right, who pushed this and urged that Bill and Hillary Clinton be prosecuted for their private email servers that was released in WikiLeaks, showing that there was a conspiracy about kidnapping children, and that the pizza chain in Washington, D.C. was somewhere involved, about this giant pedo ring that involved, the Clinton family, who was, by the way, the Clinton family is one of the worst, most nefarious families in the country's history, and they have a long disgusting, murderous, and probably a sexual sadist history themselves, but there was unfounded like conspiracies involved with this Pizzagate thing. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because there'll be a whole video on that. And he claimed that, oh, everyone's involved with this child sex ring and stuff. Like he did this for a whole year, in fact, 2 years. And then what does Jack Posobiec do? Good Lord. He actually live streams this pizzeria in, I think it was, Washington, D.C. I don't know where, but the Washington Post wrote this. And he goes inside the pizzeria, right? And he's like yelling, saying, they're involved. This is the pizza, one of the pizzerias involved with the Clintons, and they're, you know, having sex with children. There's sex trafficking here. Meanwhile, what's going on in the background? Well, there's a birthday party for a child's birthday in the back room. And he's videoing this. God, I wish I had the video. It's hilarious. I saw, I read about this in the Washington Post. This must be, I wish I could see the video. I didn't look, but, and then later on, what does he do? And this goes to show you what a flip-flopper he is. Later on, Posobiec says that he always thought the Pizzagate theory was stupid, and that he went to the pizzeria to debunk the Pizzagate conspiracy theory that he promoted. So in other words, this flip-flopping is intentional, right? Because you're always making sure that your viewership never knows anything, but they're allowed to believe anything. And this is coming from my often used quote, which I love and I try to live by every day, of belief versus knowledge, where the people, the premise of the poem is that the American people are allowed to believe anything, but to know nothing, because with knowledge, you can act on it. With belief, you don't know, you can't go to, a court of law and basically say, well, I believe this pizza ring is involved with sex trafficking. And, basically you don't know because he flip-flops. So you don't know what to believe. You're juggling from one or the other. And I think this is intentional. I don't have evidence, but I'll get to that in a bit. Now, he basically, Posobiec, in November of 2016, he attempts to discredit anti-Trump protesters by planting a sign at a protest reading, "Rape Melania." And then he goes and denies his involvement with BuzzFeed News, which is led by Andrew Breitbart, I think. No, I'm wrong. That's Breitbart Media. Boy, I'm shot. Ben Smith, I think he's one. I think he's one. I'm not sure. I forgive me if I'm wrong about that. But he basically denies his involvement with BuzzFeed, his involvement with it, to BuzzFeed News, right? But the same phone number was used as contact with the website and the text messages he reportedly sent. And said, actually, Posobiec would later go on to say that he was questioned regarding the Secret Service about it. They went to him. A question about the text message, or the message he sent about rape Melania, saying that it was the left that did this, anti-Trump protesters. But that wasn't the case. That was a lie. And then, of course, in that time frame, Posobiec then goes and says that Disney had rewritten scenes in the Star Wars movie Rogue One to add, quote, anti-Trump scenes, calling him a racist, end quote. And that was in the, I'm reading that from Esquire magazine. And he called for a boycott of the whole Star Wars franchise. And Disney, of course, denied the allegations, right? In June of 2017, after Steve Scalise, the Republican congressman who was shot and injured during a baseball practice, along with I think like 3 or 4 others, Posobiec tweets that it was a terrorist attack and blamed comments from anti-Trump protesters. Later, he would falsely tweet that the United States Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, had called for blood in the streets that previous March. And that Bernie Sanders, of all people, had ordered his followers to take down Trump. All this turned out to be untrue. And I think he knew it, but did it anyway. Because, like I said, he would rather divide than unionize. In June of 2020, during the protests against racism and police brutality and the murder of George Floyd was a disgusting, reprehensible individual. Nevertheless, we have a problem with police brutality in this country. Posobiec falsely claims that there was pipe bombs planted at the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., and that the federal agents were in pursuit. Federal assets that did this. But again, there were no pipe bombs, nor was there any evidence that federal assets or agents investigated the matter. The claim didn't stop from the Gateway Pundit to retweet Posobiec's claim on Twitter. And so, you know, it really grinds my gears regarding people like Jack Posobiec. And there was another thing, too, regarding this tweet, where he basically says that the ADL, National, would be wise to remember what happened the last time people made lists of undesirables. I think he later deleted this tweet. What is he referencing that as, you know? I mean, all you have to do is read the words, read in between the lines. What is he insinuating here? I think it's obvious. He wants his followers of the alt-right to react that he wouldn't do because he's an instigator. And so let me go and claim, you know, make my speculative thoughts about Jack Posobiec. Jack Posobiec comes from Office of Naval Intelligence. Do I think he's a naval operative meant to sow division within the American public and spread false conspiracy theories, which are basically misinforming the public? All of this on purpose? No, I have no evidence for this, but I speculate that he is doing this on purpose. In the hopes of creating a faction within the political consciousness of the American people that they are enemies to themselves. And what I'm trying to do, I know Jack Posobiec won't see this because I'm nobody, but I'm hoping that maybe a follower of Jack Posobiec or somebody who knows about Jack Posobiec and doesn't know whether to make up their mind whether he's reputable or not. Well, I hope that this video, and nothing I said is unsubstantiated. Everything I say is basically backed up by his own words, by his own deeds, which you can find all over viral media. You can Google everything I'm saying. I'll never make a statement that is not corroborated by evidence, because if I'm using speculation or if I'm using a analytical anecdote, I'll mention that beforehand, because I want an informed public, not a misinformed public, not what Jack Posobiec wants. And I think he's doing this on purpose to create a reaction within the American consciousness on his political side of the fence, in the hopes of keeping the American consciousness divided, afraid, and dependent on the state. Because no matter what, Jack Posobiec may claim at CPAC in Texas last year that they are the real woke mob, not these delusional Muppets of the left, right? They're the ones who believe in reality. Well, guess what, Jack Posobiec and those who follow him, you're not awake, you're just asleep. In fact, I wouldn't even say you're asleep. I would say that you're fully brainwashed because you watch a specific channel on TV, whether it's OAN, whether it's Fox, no different than, say, reading um, the Lincoln Project online or watching CNN. It's a brainwashing tool. I haven't watched TV in 13, 14 years. I don't even have a TV in my room. I will never watch TV. It's a brainwashing mechanism. Now, I'm not saying everything on TV is, poison for your mind, but the media truly is. And Jack Posobiec is a part of that media. And just because he says right things about the left doesn't mean that he's going to admit that his side of the fence is just as poisonous or acidic. And so when Clint Russell basically uses Jack Posobiec's own, Jack Posobiec's name in regards to him being a China hawk, because he criticizes the left and the Biden administration regarding Ukraine, well, Clint Russell was absolutely 100% correct. And all you have to do is take a look at Jack Posobiec's own words all over media, conservative media. He advocates for conflict against China. He hates the fact that we're spending billions in Ukraine because he thinks billions should have been spent in Taiwan instead. So in other words, Jack Posobiec is no different than, say, Malcolm Nance of CNN, right? Malcolm Nance, he dresses up as a soldier, goes to Ukraine. You think he's on the battlefield? Just like Jack Posobiec won't be dressed up as a soldier and go serve at the front lines of China. You know who will? You will, the public, because you fell victim to the legacy media and their narratives. What I'm telling you is to get that proverbial IV out of your arm, get it out of your mind, and truly be free.